The bullet wasn't meant for the little girl. Iris knew that the moment she heard the crack of gunfire split through the ballroom. Sharp, wrong, out of place among the clinking glasses and the string quartet and the soft laughter of people who had never once worried about money. She hadn't thought. That was the thing she kept coming back to, later lying in the hospital bed with tubes running into her arm and the steady mechanical beep marking off seconds like a metronome. She hadn't thought at all. One moment, she was carrying a tray of champagne flutes past table 7. The next, she had dropped everything and thrown herself sideways, wrapping both arms around the small body of the little girl in the green dress. The one who had been tugging at her father's sleeve all night, bored and sweet and completely unaware that a man in the corner of the room had just raised a gun. Iris didn't feel the first bullet. She felt the second one. The third landed somewhere in her left side, low and deep, and that was when her legs stopped working and she went down hard on the marble floor, still holding the girl against her chest. She remembers the ceiling. She remembers the chandelier above her, enormous and blazing, throwing light in every direction. She remembers thinking absurdly that it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Then everything went dark. Her name was Iris Voss, 28 years old. She worked 3 jobs, weekday mornings at a dry cleaner on 5th, weekday evenings at a diner 2 blocks from her apartment, and weekend nights as a waitress for a catering company called Premier Events, which placed her in hotel ballrooms and gallery openings and private galas she would never have been able to afford to attend as a guest. She did it for her brother. Elliot was 19 and had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 11. The management wasn't complicated if you had money. If you didn't, it was a second job, then a third, then cutting your own grocery budget down to the bone so the insulin stayed covered. Their parents were gone. A car accident outside Columbus when Iris was 22 and Elliot was 13. She had been in her second year of college. She left. She never thought much about what she'd given up. Elliot was here. That was enough. The night of the gala, she had been on her feet since 5 in the morning. She was tired in that specific way that lives below the skin. Not in the muscles, but in the eyes, in the jaw, in the small of the back. She had told herself, 3 more hours. 3 more hours and you can go home, 3 more hours. Instead, she spent the next 11 days in the ICU at Mercy General. She woke up to white ceiling, white curtain, white blanket tucked to her chin with a precision that suggested someone else had done it, not a nurse in a hurry. For a moment she just lay there, cataloguing what she could feel. The pull of stitches, the dull throb in her back where something had torn through and been removed, the specific soreness of a body that had been opened up and put back together. Then she heard breathing that wasn't hers. She turned her head slowly. It cost her more than she expected. A man was sitting in the chair beside her bed. She had seen him at the gala. She remembered that much, vaguely, the way you remember background details that didn't seem important at the time. No, tall, dark jacket, the kind of stillness that made him look like he was posing for a photograph even when he was just standing there. The little girl in the green dress had been with him. His daughter. He looked different now. Jacket gone. His forearms rested on his knees, hands loosely clasped, and he was watching her with an expression she couldn't immediately name. Not relief, exactly. Something heavier than relief. "You're awake," he said. His voice was low, and it didn't go up at the end the way a question would. It was just an observation, made carefully. "Apparently," she said, and her own voice came out in pieces, dry and thin. He reached over without a word and poured water from a pitcher on the bedside table, held the cup toward her. She took it with both hands. Her arms were weak enough that she needed both, and drank. He waited until she was done. "My name is Adrian Caruso," he said. "The girl you protected is my daughter. Her name is Mia. She's 6 years old." Iris processed this. "Is she okay?" Something moved across his face. "She's unharmed. Because of you." She nodded slowly. Her side ached with even that small movement. "You took 3 bullets," he said. 2 in your back, 1 in your left side. The one on the left came close to your kidney. The surgeons were in there for 9 hours. 9 hours. She thought about Elliot. He didn't even know where she was. "My brother," she said. "Someone needs to tell my brother." "It's been handled," Adrian Caruso said. She looked at him. "He's been notified. He's been here twice. He was here last night. The nurses asked him to leave at 11. Visiting hours." He paused. "He'll be back this morning." She didn't know what to do with that. With the efficiency of it. With the fact that this stranger had apparently thought to handle the one thing she would have panicked about most. "Thank you," she said. He shook his head barely. "Don't." There was a long silence. Outside the window, grey early morning light was pressing against the blinds. "I need to explain something to you," Adrian Caruso said. His voice had changed slightly. Still quiet, but with a weight to it now, a deliberateness. "And I need you to understand that what I'm about to say is not a threat. It is the opposite of a threat, but you need to hear it clearly." Iris said nothing. She watched him. "The man who fired those shots last night was an associate of a rival family. My family has certain connections that put us at odds with people who sometimes choose violence as a form of communication." He said it without flinching, without lowering his eyes. Direct, almost clinical. "The shooter is dead. My men dealt with that before the police arrived. But the man who gave the order, he doesn't yet know whether Mia survived the shooting." She understood then why his expression looked like what it did. It wasn't just relief. It was the face of a man who had spent 11 days sitting beside a stranger's hospital bed because the alternative, sitting somewhere else, away from the one person who stood between his daughter and a second attempt, was not something he was capable of. "You saw the shooter's face," he said, "before he fired. You were the only person in that room close enough, and still enough, to see him clearly before the chaos started. That makes you a loose end in the eyes of the man who hired him." Iris felt the heart monitor accelerate slightly. She watched the numbers on the screen across the room. "I'm telling you this," he said, "because I am not going to let anything happen to you. But the safest way to protect you, the way that keeps you beyond reach, legally, permanently, is if you are connected to me in a way that makes moving against you the same as moving against my entire organization." The room was very quiet. "I want to marry you," he said. She stared at him. "I understand that." He stopped. "Started again. You don't know me. You were working a catering shift, and you ended up in surgery for 9 hours because of my family's business. I'm not asking you to feel anything about this. I'm asking you to let me protect you the way I should have protected you that night. By marrying me," she said. "Yes, you want to marry a woman you've never had a conversation with. I've been sitting beside your bed for 11 days, he said. "I know more about you than you might think." She almost laughed. It came out as something else, something smaller. That's not really how agreed. It isn't." He looked at her steadily. "But I am asking, and if you say no, I'll find another way to keep you safe. This is not a condition. It is an offer." Iris looked at the ceiling for a long moment. She thought about Elliot. She thought about 3 jobs and insulin costs, and the way her feet felt at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night after 6 hours of carrying trays. She thought about the chandelier. She thought about the little girl in the green dress. "Tell me about your daughter," she said. He was quiet for a moment. She watched him decide something. "Mia's mother died 4 years ago," he said. "Mia was 2. She doesn't remember her. She has—" He stopped again, briefly. "She has nightmares. She doesn't like loud noises. She's learning to read, and she's very stubborn about sounding out words she already knows." The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. "She asked me twice while you were unconscious whether you were going to be okay. I told her yes, both times." Iris didn't say anything. "She brought you this," he said, and reached into his jacket pocket. He set something on the edge of the bed beside her hand, a small folded piece of paper, the kind that's been folded and refolded many times. She picked it up carefully and opened it. It was a crayon drawing, unambiguous in the way that a 6-year-old's drawings are. A woman in a blue dress lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by what appeared to be red and yellow flowers. Above the woman, in careful, enormous letters, "Get better, please." Iris held the drawing for a long time without speaking. "Okay," she said finally. He looked at her. "Okay," she said again. "I'll do it, but I have conditions. Name them. My brother has nothing to do with any of this. He's kept out of everything. He never knows anything he doesn't need to know." Agreed. "I stay working. Not 3 jobs, but something. I'm not going to just sit somewhere." He nodded once. "Agreed, and if at any point I want to leave—" "You can leave," he said without hesitation, "whenever you want. The only thing I ask is that we have an honest conversation before you do, so we can make arrangements to protect you another way." She looked at him for a long moment, at the lines around his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept well in 11 days, at his hands, still loosely clasped, at the steadiness of him, that quality she'd noticed across a crowded ballroom, reduced now to this. A man sitting next to a hospital bed at 7 in the morning, asking a question he clearly hadn't planned to ask. "You really sat here for 11 days, she said. "I wasn't going to leave you alone," he said simply. She looked back at the drawing in her hands. "Get better, please." "All right, Mr. Caruso," she said. "You have a deal." The wedding was small and fast and entirely legal. A judge came to the hospital 3 days before they discharged her. Adrian's attorney stood on one side. A nurse served as the second witness. Iris wore a hospital gown under a cardigan that one of the nurses, a tall woman named Bet, who had clearly decided to become emotionally invested in this situation, had gone out and bought for her at a shop down the street. The ring was simple. A narrow gold band, no stone. He'd put it on her left hand, which she'd noticed with a kind of detached relief, because the last thing she needed was to be explaining Italian ring customs to anyone. Elliot had stood in the corner with his arms crossed and said nothing throughout the entire ceremony. Afterward, when the judge had left and it was just the two of them, he'd looked at her for a long moment. "Tell me you know what you're doing," he said. "I know what I'm doing," she said. "That was a lie. A partial lie." He sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. He was thinner than she remembered. Elliot got thin when he was worried, forgot to eat the same way most people forgot to check their phone. "He's not what I expected," Elliot said finally. "What did you expect?" "I don't know, more." He moved his hand vaguely. "More Hollywood." "Luda, he's quiet," she agreed. "He looked at you the whole time," Elliot said. "During the ceremony. He didn't look away once." Iris didn't have anything to say to that. The Caruso house was not what she'd imagined. She'd built a picture in her mind during the 3 days between the wedding and her discharge. Marble, gold fixtures, the kind of impersonal grandeur that looks like money but not like life. The visual shorthand of every movie about this world she'd ever seen. What she found instead was a house in the older part of the city, 4 stories of grey stone with dark window frames and an enormous amount of books. Books in the front hallway, books in the sitting room, books stacked on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker, practical furniture, a mudroom with small rain boots beside the door. The housekeeper, Mrs. Farrow, she didn't introduce herself any other way, met them at the door with the particular efficiency of someone who had been managing a household alone for a long time, and had opinions about how things should be done. She showed Iris to her room with a brisk politeness that didn't commit to warmth in either direction. Iris was still moving carefully. The stitches pulled when she took the stairs. Her room was on the 2nd floor, quiet, with a window that looked out over a garden that hadn't been tended in some time. She stood at the window and looked at the overgrown hedges and the old iron bench going rusty at the joints, a sound in the hallway. Small footsteps, the deliberate weight-testing quality of a child, who is trying very hard to be quiet and failing, then a knock, so light it was almost nothing. Iris crossed to the door and opened it. The little girl from the ballroom looked up at her. Up close she had her father's eyes, dark, steady, taking things in. She was wearing blue overalls and one of her 2 pigtails had mostly come undone. She was holding a book against her chest, with both arms the way children hold things they consider important. For a moment they just looked at each other. "You're the lady," Mia said. "I am," Iris said. "You have stitches." She said it matter-of-factly, not unkindly. "An observation. 3 sets," Iris said. "They're very good stitches." Mia appeared to consider this. "Does it hurt?" "Not so much anymore." Another pause. "I drew you a picture," Mia said. "In the hospital, did you get it?" "I got it," Iris said. "It's one of the nicest pictures anyone has ever given me." Something happened in the little girl's face. Not a full smile. Something more careful than that, like a door opening just slightly. "I couldn't put real flowers," Mia said, "because you weren't allowed to have them in there. So I drew them instead. That was very thoughtful. Papa said you were going to stay here now." "That's right." Maya shifted the book slightly in her arms. "Do you know how to read out loud?" she asked. "Farrow does the voices, but she always uses the same voice for everybody and it makes it confusing." Iris's chest did something she wasn't prepared for. "I can do different voices," she said. Mia looked at her for one more long moment with those careful dark eyes. Then she held the book out. "Okay," she said. "You can come read with me, but you have to sit on the reading side, the left side. That's the rule." "The left side," Iris agreed. She followed Mia down the hall. She had been in the house for 3 weeks when it happened. She knew the rhythms of the place by then. Adrian left early, came back late, sometimes not at all, and when he came back late his footsteps on the stairs were slower than when he'd left. She knew the sound of Mia's nightmares at 2 in the morning, the sudden cry and then silence, and she had started getting up before she'd consciously made the decision to, crossing the hall in the dark. That night was different. She went to Mia's room as usual, sat on the edge of the bed, and talked her back down the way she'd learned to. Quietly, about nothing important, the garden, a bird she'd seen on the old iron bench that morning, the voices she was planning to practice for the next chapter of their book. She didn't hear Adrian behind her until he spoke. "Iris." She turned. He was in the doorway. He'd come from somewhere, still in his jacket, and he was looking at her with an expression she'd learned to read by now, controlled, careful, and underneath it, something that cost him to keep quiet. "There's someone outside," he said. His voice was very even. "Go to Mia's closet and stay there with her. Do not open the door for any reason until you hear my voice." She felt the air change in the room. "Adrian, please," he said. She had never heard him say please like that before, like something was pressing down on it. She took Mia, who had woken up and was looking between them with wide, too alert eyes, and they went to the closet. She shut the door and sat on the floor with her back against it and pulled Mia into her lap. She felt Mia's breathing, fast at first, and then, as the minutes passed, slower, steadied against her heartbeat. She heard movement, downstairs. Voices brief and clipped, a door. Then silence, then Adrian's footsteps on the stairs, the specific weight of them, the rhythm she knew now without thinking about it. "It's me," he said. She opened the door. He crouched down to Mia's level first, checked her face, said something quiet that Iris didn't catch. Mia nodded once, the same small nod she used when she was trying to be brave. He lifted her back to bed, tucked the blanket in, then he straightened and looked at Iris. "Come downstairs," he said. "I'll explain." They sat in the kitchen. He poured coffee. It was nearly 3 in the morning, but neither of them addressed that. He set a cup in front of her and stayed standing. "The man who ordered the hit at the gala," he said, "he made contact tonight. With a message." He paused. "He knows you're alive. He knows you're here. He chose to send a messenger rather than act directly, which means he's cautious, or he's gathering information. Either way, it's not done." She wrapped her hands around the cup. The coffee was very hot. "He's testing you," she said. Adrian looked at her. "He wants to know how you react," she said. "Whether you go into lockdown or whether you move against him, he's reading you." A silence. "Yes," Adrian said, "that's my read as well." She looked at the table. She was thinking. "He doesn't know what I saw," she said slowly. "At the gala. He knows I was close to the shooter, close enough to be a problem, but he doesn't know exactly what I have, what I could identify." "No," Adrian agreed. She looked up at him. "Then we use it." Something shifted in his face. "Iris, you have events," she said. "Things like the gala, dinners, sit-downs, whatever you call them. We do. If he's testing you, the next logical move is for him to get close enough to read the room. Attend something, send someone, watch." She was working through it out loud and she knew it. She pressed ahead anyway. "If I'm there, visibly there, clearly not hiding, clearly not afraid, he has to recalibrate. He has to ask why you'd bring me somewhere public if I actually had something on him. It shifts the advantage." Adrian stared at her for a long moment. "You've been thinking about this," he said. "I've been thinking about a lot of things," she said. "I had 11 days in a hospital bed." He set his coffee down, ran one hand through his hair, which was the most unguarded gesture she had ever seen him make. "You'd be at risk," he said. "I'm at risk here," she said. "At least out there I'm doing something. I almost shot my own wife once," he said suddenly. His voice was flat, not dramatic, the kind of voice a person uses when they're confessing something they've turned over many times. Early on, before Mia was born. A moment of, "It doesn't matter. The point is I made a mistake that nearly cost someone their life. I don't make the same mistake twice." The kitchen was very quiet. "This isn't a mistake," Iris said. "It's a choice. Mine." He looked at her for a long moment. "There's a dinner," he said finally. 2 weeks from now. Clients, associates, and almost certainly someone reporting back to the man who hired that shooter. It's been planned for months. Cancelling would signal weakness. "Then don't cancel," Iris said. "You'd come as my wife. I am your wife." The corner of his mouth moved. "Yes," he said quietly. "You are." The dinner was at a private club in Midtown. She wore navy, which was Adrian's suggestion, offered without pressure, and she'd taken it because she had no strong opinion, and navy apparently communicated something specific in these rooms. She wore her hair up. She wore the gold ring. She sat at Adrian's right hand at a long table of 15 people, and she listened more than she spoke, and she watched. She had the gift for it, for watching. 3 jobs teaches you that. Catering specifically teaches you that. The invisible fluency of someone who serves without being seen. She knew how to hold her face open and interested while her attention was elsewhere. She knew how to track a room without moving her eyes. The man who didn't belong arrived with dessert. He was a guest of a guest, introduced vaguely, and he was too careful. That was the tell. Everyone else at the table was either genuinely relaxed or performing relaxation in ways that still looked human. This man performed attention. His eyes moved in the specific pattern of someone cataloging a room, which is not a civilian pattern. She felt it before she fully understood it, the way she'd felt the wrongness of that first shot in the ballroom, not thought, just known. She placed her hand on Adrian's wrist. A light touch, nothing that would read across the table. He didn't move, didn't look at her. But she felt the slight tension of his arm beneath her fingers change, the attention redirected. She reached for her water glass with her right hand. She turned it once, a small movement, and then set it down with the stem toward the center of the table instead of the edge. Adrian looked at his own glass. Then he looked briefly at the man across the room. He understood. What happened next was handled so quietly that Iris almost missed it. A word to the man on his left, a shift in where people stood. The guest of a guest excused himself before coffee was served and did not return. The dinner ended with handshakes and the usual pleasantries. Adrian's hand found the small of her back as they walked out, and he left it there on the sidewalk while the car was brought around, and she was suddenly, unexpectedly aware of the weight of it. The warmth. In the car, he didn't say anything for several blocks. Then, "How did you know?" "He was watching too hard," she said. "Everyone else was either comfortable or pretending. He was working." A pause. "He was there to confirm you'd be making a move against his employer," Adrian said. "Instead he saw you. Calm, present, clearly not frightened. He was looking straight ahead. You changed what he reports back." "I know," she said. He turned his head and looked at her for a long moment. "You should have been sleeping tonight," he said. "You were scheduled for a quiet evening. Mia was expecting you at 8 for the next chapter. Mia was asleep by 7:30, Iris said. "I checked." He looked jaw had changed, some of the held tension released. "She's sleeping better," he said. Since you came." A slight hesitation on the word. "The nightmares are less frequent. She just needed someone to sit with her," Iris said. "Long enough that she stopped waiting to be alone again." The city went by outside the window. "Iris," he said. "Yes, I want to." He stopped, started again with what felt like real effort. "I want to tell you something, and I need you to know it has no conditions attached. It is not a renegotiation of any arrangement, it is simply true." She waited. "I have not been ease," he said carefully. "In a very long time, in this house, in any room. The kind of ease where you're not measuring exits or calculating variables or waiting for the next thing to go wrong." He was looking ahead again, at the back of the driver's seat. "You walk into a room and I don't do that," the car hummed. Midtown fell away behind them and the streets got quieter. "That's a strange thing to admit," Iris said. "I know," he said. She looked at her hands, her lap, the gold ring. "I feel it too," she said. "Just so you know, whatever the name of it is." He reached across the seat and put his hand over hers. He didn't say anything, she didn't either. They rode the rest of the way home like that in the dark, with the city going quiet outside and the ring warm on her finger, and somewhere ahead of them the grey stone house, where Mia was sleeping without nightmares and the books were stacked on the kitchen counter, and the iron bench was going rusty in the garden, and all of it, had somehow, improbably, begun to feel like hers. 2 days later, Adrian came home before noon. Iris was in the garden with Mia, holding a pair of shears she didn't entirely know how to use, while Mia supervised with the seriousness of a foreman, telling her which branches were the problem ones. The overgrown hedge had become a project. Mia had declared it so, which meant it was so. Adrian stood at the back door for a moment watching them. "Papa," Mia called. "We're fixing the garden, I can see that," he said. He came down the steps. He was carrying something, an envelope, thick, official-looking. "The man from the gala," he said to Iris, keeping his voice level and low so Mia wouldn't track the content. "The one who ordered it. He's being taken care of. The messenger he sent to our dinner confirmed enough for us to move. It's over." Iris lowered the shears. "Mia is safe," he said. "You are safe. It is finished." She had thought she might feel more than this, some dramatic release, a wave of something. Instead, she felt the weight of the shears in her hand and the sun on her face and Mia pulling at her sleeve to show her the branch she'd identified as the worst offender. "Okay," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "I'm fixing the garden," she said. Something crossed his face. Full, unguarded, the smile he didn't let himself have at tables with 15 people but had it turned out kept somewhere private all along. "Then I'll get another pair of shears," he said. He went inside. Came back 2 minutes later. Stood next to her at the hedge. Mia pointed imperiously at the worst branch. They got to work.